Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. On this episode, I'm excited to have Judy Werthauser. She is Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer at Walmart US, over 1.4 million humans. And I'm excited to have her on the show. Judy, thanks for doing this.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Well, I want to back up just a little bit. Can you give people the 1 minute flyover on the Judy story, just from a career perspective?
Sure.
US Bancorp, Walmart, Domino's, all the things.
Yeah. Actually, it goes all the way back. I'm going to do the real quick. Grew up in a family of small business owners. So my parents owned mom and pop grocery stores. So I didn't know any different of working all the time and kind of how that molds you as a person when your parents are working. And I grew up working in the cleaning shelves and doing register and stocking and that type of thing. Oh, shockingly, then I ended up marrying my husband, who also is an entrepreneur in retail. And it's funny and so we grew from there. In between there, I did a lot of my education was in leadership, organization development, industrial psychology, kind of always a combo of business and psychology. As I said, I worked at the University of Minnesota. I worked with my husband. We were entrepreneurs and grew our own retail business and wholesale business. Ended up at Dayton Hudson Marshall Field, which then turned into Marshall Fields, all owned by Target. Went through the sale when Target sold it to May Company, which then got by Macy's. So went through, my claim to fame is 3 companies, 18 months, and never moved my chair. And then I ended up at US Bank, Domino's, and Five Below, where I was the chief experience officer, which had a broader perspective and broader set of responsibilities. And then here at Walmart, in charge of Walmart US and supporting all of our associates who serve our customers every day.
Wow, that's an incredible rise. It's funny, on this show, I have a lot more investors and CEOs and entrepreneurs than C-level executives. But the thing that I hear all the time over and over is people.
Yeah.
Culture. And some people, it's like, it feels a little more like just words. And then some people, you feel like it's like really in the bones, of these different leaders. I'm interested, when you think about partnering with a CEO, partnering with the people who are also on that executive level directing, one of the largest organizations in the world, what's your framework or what's your mentality about how to attach to business and not be in a separate world of HR and people?
Oh, well, so a couple things. I'm thinking back to all the different CEOs that I partnered with, and I happen to partner with John Furner right now. So that's a very lucky draw, I would tell you. Walmart is unique, and Doug too, who I should definitely give a shout out to in terms of the CEO of Walmart. John's the CEO of Walmart US. But this is a company where in our statement we talk about being people led, and we talk about it daily. And the difference for somebody in my position is that I never have to convince them why it's important to invest in their people. In fact, I have to keep up to them. That is not the norm. A lot of times, even some of my favorite CEOs, they are people led to a point. Okay. And usually it's an investment consideration. And usually that's where the struggle comes in. And then there's CEOs who are not. Period. Okay. At the very other end. And they claim they are, but they are not. And you can see it in the decisions that they make. So for me, it's critical. I lean in very hard with the focus on the business. And so my whole goal is about, my personal purpose is about bringing out the potential, helping individuals and organizations realize their full potential. So it's important for me for the individuals to recognize how they can accomplish what they want in life. And if Walmart or other companies are a vehicle for that set of impact and accomplishment, but it's bigger than that, and my hope and dreams for them. And then also complementary, it's about achieving the even the greatest, the larger potential of every company. So even at Walmart, as knock on wood, we're doing okay and we have momentum. The goal is to see where that potential leads to and then figure out how to align all the pieces to even reach more than we could wish for. Right. And so for me, that's how I focus my work. That's how I focus my day to day. So I'm always scanning the horizon and need partnership to position leaders in order to achieve more than they even expected they knew they could achieve. That's my hope for them. So that's how I need a team that I can work with that's open to that. And I've been very fortunate along my career to have a lot of teams that are open to that type of support and focus.
Yeah. What's an example of how that shows up? What's a story? What's a
Yeah, I
something?
mean, there's multiple stories. So if you think about the largest back in the day when I was at Target, I was on the team that and helped lead the team that moved the philosophical working of Target from a brick and mortar retailer with an e-commerce site to an omni-channel retailer, right? And so in order to do that, it's a whole ecosystem. So you have to arrange all the pieces of the ecosystem in order to achieve that goal. So I focus on organizing organizations, people, process, systems, data in such a way so that we get alignment and achieve the outcome. So whether that's an early example, but it happens daily here in how we're navigating our capability set and how we're showing up to our customers, whether it's that's kind of what I do. So it's almost an everyday situation.
Yeah. I'm interested in what that looks like. When you think about such a large number of individuals, right? I am kind of similar numbers. I have a really good friend who got out of the military. His wife was my client. She was the Surgeon General of the Army when I was doing consulting. She had 175,000 staff, and her husband retired to colonel. And then a number of years later, came back to the Army as a civilian and was essentially like chief people officer
Okay.
for the Department of Defense. So like similar, similar
Yeah.
type of numbers as you, right? And so I got to see this a little bit from a DoD perspective, but not a corporate for-profit
Yeah.
perspective. My question for you is this concept of having that feeling that you're describing get all the way to the frontline staff when there's
Yeah.
1.4 million humans
Yeah.
that you're trying to help reach their potential, and planning and processes. Very often the water doesn't get to the end of the row in a lot of organizations. And so I'd love to know what that looks like for
Yeah.
you with such a physically dispersed workforce and just such a large volume.
Well, the way that happens is always through the manager, right? That's a kind of a classic. We like everybody knows that, but you have to truly believe that. And you have to set those leaders up with all the tools that they need. So you have to hire the right people. You have to align on your messaging. You have to lead them in a role modeling way that helps them lead their teams in the right way. When you're that spread out, a lot can happen in the middle that is inauthentic to the intent of what you're trying to do. You have to have complementary programs. So Walmart has we have skill-based programs, we have education, we build compensation, we are continually leveraging recognition and trying to help people live better lives. That's part of our purpose. And we believe that when you do that with associates first, it comes with our customers. And so I spend the day focused on working on alignment in messaging, continually uplifting leaders and building methodologies, not just programs, but you have to build it into the day in and day out fabric of what you're doing. So how are we doing talent management? How are we evaluating decisions? How are we moving people through their development?
Yeah. So can you give us an example of in your life of continuous improvement, like what's a new decision that you guys made, or what's one that you felt like was a lever that worked when you pulled it?
So one that we made earlier this year that again, like I don't even take credit for it because it was actually the business leadership, which is the best when they do that, is they invested, and this was in the press, invested in our store management. And so the construct is that they have opportunity to earn, they have really well paying jobs, and they got equity in the company, and they became owners. And so the construct of owners has a lot behind it, right? One, you own your P&L. What does that mean? That means we're transparent on way more than we've been transparent on. Not to the intention of like hiding. That was never the intention. But, you know, do you need to know some or don't you need to know some? There's other people deciding they don't need to know things, but they're on the front line leading these teams. So much more openness around what that P&L looks like and how they can control that. And it also insinuates trust. And so the idea of building trust for speed and how we think about role modeling signs of trust, confidence, competency, and helping we listen really well. That's the other part. We're very good listeners to what's happening. So our associates have a strong voice that we listen to.
Let's talk about that. I don't think there's any leaders that would come on here and say that they're bad listeners, right? But there are definitely, some people are better than others.
Yeah.
When you think about what makes a great listener, when you're at headquarters and the managers are in all these cities all over the country, talk about this idea of being a good listener as you frame it.
I will tell you, because this is your question is like my whole career is like, yes, Walmart is different. It is amazing. And I've learned a ton about this. So we have a policy, it's called open door policy, and any associate in the entire company can email anyone at any time about anything. And they do. And often it's to Doug. And those, a lot of times, they go to the right leaders, right? So we can interact. So I'm on the phone at least every week talking to an associate, generally hourly, about a difficulty that they feel that they have no other option but to let us know it's happening, because however they're trying to navigate, it's not working. Well, guess what? They get our time and attention. We help them navigate it. We take the lessons therein. So that's one example of just an associate who reaches out and says, I need help. The other example is 3 times a year, but actually more than that. The entire leadership team of the U.S., John et al., are in what we call listening sessions with all store managers. And we sit for an hour at least. Well, it's actually like 3 hours because we have to get through all this in different stages. And it's an open mic. There is no planned agenda. It is an open mic. And they bring their issues, and we have a whole team ready at helm to solve it. Everything's solved they're responded to within hours. We're talking like either an hour to 48 hours. Oh, and then we get their ideas to implement and figure out what's not working to help them do what they need to do. So the examples of listening are beyond anything I've ever seen. And it's just a daily fabric. It's in our lives, what we do every day, all day. And it's just all levels. So that's me with store managers, but it's all the way down to me with the hourly associate. But imagine all of the other people who are doing the same thing.
Yeah. I can see so many people. I mean, I think there are countries with less than 1.4 million people.
Yeah.
So you can think of how many folks in senior leadership would be scared of that. Won't people abuse it? And how can we possibly deal with it all? And so it's fascinating to hear, no, we actually do it. And we're excited. We've built a system to handle it.
Well, you have to, I think there's some core values that you have to put in place. Like we have very deep core values. And by the way, Stan Walton, who founded the company, this was him, right? So we really just hung on to how the company, which is really fascinating and pretty cool, how he founded it from one store on. And he's famous for, we talk about it all the time here, for how he listened. And so for us, servant leadership is in our values. And you hire people who are, we're confident in who we are. And so we're okay giving like that. The idea is to trust, and the idea is to serve those. And so when you come in with that piece, you let go of your own ego, and then it all boats rise.
Okay, can we talk about this? I've heard you on other interviews talking about AI and the way that you guys have embraced it, not just on the creative side, but in supply chain or other places.
Yep.
So I'm interested in your philosophy when it comes to hiring very senior people who can help you reinvent the future. You know what I mean? Since Amazon, I've seen you guys completely reinvent yourself online.
Yeah.
And, this is something that you are doing already. Now, like all leaders, you're facing the what do we look like in the world of AI? When it comes to recruiting and winning, but then also integrating somebody who you want to help you get to the next level.
Yeah.
But they still have to work within the framework of the decades long history of without wrecking the culture. Like, it seems like there's a little bit of complexity there of like bureaucracies aren't known for change, yet you guys have had big changes. You need somebody great who's going to help you in the future without wrecking the current Walmart culture that you worked hard to build. Talk to me about navigating that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, well, we do. I mean, a lot of companies do what they believe is a thorough job in hiring, and we have a pretty thorough approach to hiring, and that looks at a whole person, right? And I think there's kind of like two pieces going on. So one is, as a leadership team, we are very aligned in where we are today and where we want to go. Okay. And we understand the gap, and we understand the transformation that needs to happen. And collectively, we understand the capabilities and the skills that we own and don't own. And that's like part of what I do is help with that alignment so that when we go out, or, let's assume we're bringing in talent that brings in new perspective, right? That we're doing two things. We're all of us together are supporting the collective review, okay, so that we know what we're looking for. And then you do have to, people always say, will they fit in the culture? There is a culture fit that is important. And at the end of the day, to me, that always goes down to character and values, and how they think about that and who they come to as a person. And then there's a good integration plan so that as they onboard, there's a lot of coaching around onboarding and how they approach showing up.
Okay, I want to dig into these.
Okay.
So, for people who haven't worked at the top of a giant organization, what does the thorough hiring process look like at Walmart?
What is a thorough hiring process? Well, it looks like in a company like ours, it looks like a lot of interviews. Okay, so basically,
approximately how many?
Could be 10.
Okay,
that's a lot. Okay, I don't know if I love that. It depends. Okay, so on one hand, you're like, so I say it quiet. You can hear my voice quietly because I don't know how proud I am or not. Okay, and sometimes you're like, listen. The reason you do that for senior roles in particular is it's an early buy-in. It's important for people because you want alignment. You want everybody to have be accountable for that person's success and shared accountability versus being done to. I'm a person who likes to do things with, not be done to. Okay. And so you have to think about that. And we have so you have to do it in your business, and then you have to do partners and things like that. Then you have an assessment as well. That's a part of it. That's pretty thorough. And you're doing one-offs. You're evaluating their interaction with, people who are showing them around and how they're interacting with this, they're visiting the city. We're in Bentonville. So a lot of people have to, get used to Arkansas and Bentonville and what the idea of that looks like, which is great, by the way. If any of you it's a great hidden secret. I love it here. And so that's kind of what it looks like. And it takes time, a lot of conversations. Okay, then I lost my train of thought.
Well, then, no, let's now talk about, okay, we've got enough buy-in from another folks.
Yeah.
You've done enough assessments. You're
Yeah.
feeling like, okay, this is worth the gamble. Let's go for this. This idea of onboarding and integration and helping them become part of the
Yeah.
Walmart family. Talk to me about what that looks like.
Yeah. So one of the things I should say too is when you're interviewing, like when I spend time with them, and I know others do as well, we're already talking about like there's early interviews where you're like, tell me about yourself. Let me figure out who you are and what you're made of. There's that part of it. And then let's assume all goes well. Then you're into the, okay, here's the problem set that we're dealing with. And how can you contribute to that problem set? And let's talk it through a little bit. And so you start kind of like figuring out the chess game and how their ideas and how they think about it. And not so much that they come in with the answer, but you're at this level, it's about not necessarily knowing the answer, but about having different ways to problem solve and different perspectives to bring in, especially in a land like you talked about AI or technological or the way the experience is changing and how we're driving the experience for our customers or our associates. It's new levels of ways of doing things. So it's not about that exact answer. It's about like, here's how to think about something. So all of that's happening along the way. So you can think through then how I guide and coach people at Walmart in particular. Listen, we're not in crisis. So don't behave like we're in crisis. Okay. There's a lot of people here. They've been here for a long time and they know a lot. And so listen, okay. Develop perspective, and I always say, develop hypotheses to check. Like, listen, and you can develop a hypothesis and say, it seems to me, and then check your hypothesis with people, because then what you're doing is you're showing how you're thinking, and other people can get aligned with you're thinking about it right or not thinking about it right. And you can move from there. The more people gain confidence early on in how you think about things, the more you'll just become part of the fabric versus like the new person. And you're the new person for a long time here, just so you know, like there's a lot of tenure here. And so it's really, again, there's a difference between being urgent and in crisis. And so don't like, we're very careful on helping people make sure they're not kind of like bull in a china shop behavior. You just don't need to, you need to act with urgency, but you don't need to act like you're in a crisis.
Oh, that's an interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit more about AI. What are you excited about for AI, whether that's internal in the people function or any other way for Walmart?
Well, I liken it to kind of like, it's obvious this is an obvious statement, so I'm just one of the followers, but it obviously is like the next massive iteration, right? The inflection step of how we work, right? And how we live and how we discover information and how we think about things. So that's pretty cool. That's number one. Number two is as we've been exploring it for a good year plus, from a tools against people versus like building it into the methodologies of our technology. We've been really exploring the Gen AI versus the, just AI in general, which is used all the time. And on the Gen AI front, the idea has moved from like, how not knowing how to use it to actually starting to garner where it's really valued and how to create more value out of it and how to apply it in roles at different ways. And now I'm kind of evaluating my thinking through learning through others out there around how to think of AI or Gen AI almost as members of your team. Because the tooling plays different roles. So you can use it in complementary aspects of a team versus like, it's all or none.
Yeah. You think about it, I don't know. I think about that Steve Jobs quote of like the idea of the personal computer was going to be the bicycle for the mind.
Yeah.
Not the replacement for the mind.
Yeah.
It was go further. And like to me, AI feels like, the fighter jet for the mind. Like if the computer's a bicycle, AI is like an airplane for the mind, right?
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's the computation nature of it allows you space where you couldn't, allows you understanding, it's almost like, Star Trek-y, like allows you to explore places you could never explore because it just moves you past into considerations and understanding that a human mind couldn't do.
Yeah. Well, what's an example of like, okay, a year ago you are investigating it. Now you've already found one. We're like, wow, this is actually like, it's not just buzz. This is helping us in this way.
Well, we in Walmart we have applications for these platforms that are where all the tools are. So we're an app-based tooling for our associates. And so it's a tool that we're using in the chats and in behind powering those apps. And so I can go on, and no different than me going on to some OpenAI or whatever you'd want on the kind of in the outer sphere. Internal, we have the same pieces. So it can help me write, it can help me edit, it can help me find information, it can help me, we're moving into the ability to do tasking, right? And summarizing, all those things that are kind of known to us because people are getting more and more familiar with how to use it, and it's getting a better quality. Whether it's in recruitment, whether it's every day in the stores, whether every day in the home office. But now I think the opportunity is to actually move it into complementing creative output across the organization and how to do that. So we're still early in our journey. It's definitely in the fiber of what we're doing, but I think the unlock is in front of us. But yeah, I can go on right now. Like I have my phone here and go to a chat box and chatbot and ask questions, and it'll be Gen AI powering it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm interested, think about 25 years ago when people thought if you just magically added the four letters, .com, all of a sudden adding a .com made something magically better. Because the internet was going to change everything. And look, the internet has changed most things in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
And yet it's not every role in the organization. Do you know what I mean? Like the cashier doesn't necessarily check people out a huge amount different because the internet exists. And my guess is the cashier doesn't cash somebody out massively different because AI is here. Yet you just brought up recruiting. Like the ability to search the world faster and search resumes faster and do things like this, that could be like an unlock where one person could start having the power of 20 people, them plus their AI. Whatever. So my question is, what's your decision tree look like when it comes from like, is this AI buzz or is this genuine business value for the organization?
Well, the way I think about it is about capacity. Okay. Computation and capacity is maybe the way I might think about it for the moment. One, I'm always trying to find capacity in the organization to do more, right? We want to move faster. We have big dreams. We want to accomplish more. And there comes a time, and we have a lot of people, but you can't just add people. And every leader out there knows that answer. We're all shaking our heads. Yes. Okay. And that's not actually helpful. And so the question becomes around how do you create capacity in people? And so what are we overpaying for? What functionality are we, one, overpaying for by nature of just administrative burden that we don't need? Or two, that the tooling is available to compute at such a speed that you couldn't hire enough people to compete with the speed and the cost of what it can do. So you actually have to get into, and we're doing this exercise, is to like look across the functional parts of the organization. So there is impact on the front line too, because it comes in their tooling and how they're guided through their tooling. But in the home office, you're thinking through each of the functions, and you're kind of, what can software engineers do? What capacity can we provide them by using computational tools at a different rate? Right? How about in recruitment? How about in learning? How about in marketing? How about in search? Like you can go across the org and you can find all different ways of applying it, but you need all the infrastructure to do it. Like, so it doesn't just like, oh, let's just apply it. You actually need, it's no different. You have to think through the infrastructure. You have to think through the risk and security and safety of Walmart. You have to think through the ecosystem. Not every AI tool is exactly the same. So you have to have the plethora of tools available to make it happen. So it's definitely a mass, it will definitely provide massive value go forward, but you're still in that learning mode of how to apply it to get the most value for the organization. That's maybe how I think about it.
Yeah. It's such an interesting thing. Like, I want to have a conversation with you again in a year and see how now
Okay.
another
Yeah,
year is different, right?
totally. We're still relatively early in like the Gen AI space.
Yeah. You brought up coaching, which we had talked about off
Yep.
camera ahead of time. What there's so many good things that folks in the people function can be doing. What has attracted you about coaching? What is it? Why is coaching special for you?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to my purpose. So I'm all about helping people achieve their true potential. And I'm from early on in my career, you see people kind of go in two ways. And I see confidence as a core um thing that either makes them go in one way or the other. When people start losing confidence, they spiral down, and suddenly you've got this great person who is not doesn't have confidence, on shaky ground, making less good decisions, and is worried, has all that anxiety, all this. You can just see it, right? Versus someone who has confidence, and they're able to like think clearly, and they're able to take more risks, and they show up and carry themselves differently, and their approach with others, just the way they show up. And so I really don't like when leaders bring lower confidence in people. I just it's I just don't think it's a good, like, it's not a nice thing to do. Like, it's really simple for me and my values, right? I happen to be a mom of 3 girls. That makes a difference in how confidence in women in particular and how that looks. It's always been kind of top of mind for me. So my coaching is about positioning people to, yes, you can. How would you? What do you already know inside of you? How do I bring that out inside of you? How do I give you context and perspective? How do I give you courage to ask the next question or to seek the next piece? How do I help you when things are just not going well, make good choices for yourself because it's bigger than the situation you're in? And how do I help you feel good about the decisions you're making for your life? That's it. That to me is like the most like, I just find great pleasure in helping people through that. And generally I get good response in the value that I can create, and hope that others do that rather than performance coaching. I just did air quotes. I don't know if everybody can see that. Air quotes.
Yeah. Tell me this, like, in helping Walmart leaders become better coaches to their people, how does this look different for a manager to frontline folks versus the mid-level leaders versus the most senior leaders in the organization?
Not that different, truthfully. And I mean, if you think about it, let's just go to the front line. I mean, human beings are so similar. So you want to motivate somebody. Now, the one thing I'd say is recognition and motivation does happen differently. So understanding each person's kind of like what works for one, so get to know them, number one. Number two, think about your tone of voice. What are you trying to help them achieve? And listening is really important. So if you're on the front line, and a lot of times, listen, they're doing a lot of hard labor in our stores, in our facilities, which we're changing out. We're moving to more automated, trying to make it better jobs all around, which is going well. But even so, like, we want them to feel a sense of accomplishment all the time, and we want them to have the capacity for good life. Okay. And so a leader, a store manager, or a coach in the store, which is like a team, a manager in the store, versus I'm looking out my window right now out my office and I see all the executives, and I listen for how they approach their teams. I listen for their routines. I listen for their tone. I listen for their clarity. Like, it's no different really in the end because you believe in the person's value of what they're trying to do for you and for the company. And so you treat them with that respect.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this specifically with the most senior leaders. I had Marshall Goldsmith on the show recently.
I love Marshall Goldsmith.
Right. And yes. For people who don't know his book, that I think it sold a few million copies, the What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right? And he talks so much about like that he would get to coach these senior executives who said, maybe they had some less than helpful behaviors and things, but had told themselves this story. Well, that's how I got here. Why would I change that? That got me this success. Yes. And he has the job of helping them recognize, no, you got here in spite of that, not because of that. And so I would love any advice for investors today who have CEOs working for them, for CEOs today listening who have senior execs, for any, these folks who need to help a senior leader who is very accomplished, may have a strong self-image, come to their own conclusion that they need to become a better version of themselves. Maybe they need to become a better listener. Maybe these kind of things. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. Go ask their family how things are going. Okay. Because usually what ends up happening is they're so in their head of like in focus. And I've talked to a lot of senior leaders, and in Marshall, I'm pretty sure I met him a couple of times. He wouldn't remember me, but I remember him because he's got some great advice. And he, like the leaders, when they actually stop back and say, what do you want going forward? And it is kind of the classic, like, what kind of relationships do you really want? What do you want for your legacy? How do you want to be known? And usually something pretty dramatic has to happen for a successful, a 25-year reinforced success of not a good behavior has to get like disrupted. It usually isn't from showing up one day and have I'm smarter, I'm more insightful. It's usually something like, that's why Marshall's so helpful, because he's forcing a set of reflections and a set of questions that make you sit back and really take it seriously. And you have to so there's a lot of, you have to kind of get into it with the person, because we're all we have habits, right? And our habits have either been reinforced as good, or, you've tripped a little, right? Somewhere along the line, and you learn from that. But for senior leaders where sometimes you don't get all the truth, you don't get the feedback that you need, you don't get the perspective, you have more limited perspective. I always find value, like for my role and my peers' role, like folks like us, that's part of our job. Our job is to help keep it real, because I do it in the way of wanting that. I'm for that person as much as I'm for anybody else, right? And that person impacts a lot of people. So you want that person to do well, and you want them to role model what that value below. So I'm moving on, but it's usually like you have to kind of zap them with a few questions to settle them into being reflective enough to want to do more and be even better than they are today. And that takes work.
Yeah.
Doesn't just they have to be willing to do the work.
Yeah. It's funny when you say it sounds so simple, but it's like you can automatically think of how effective it would be, if you can, if the question is right, if the environment's right, if they're in a space where they can be reflected, where it's safe to, you can make them feel safe enough to get to a place of deeper honesty with a new insight. And yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Can I just say one other thing? So for your investor community, listen, you have to, what I've always loved about the places that I've worked, and it's been somewhat intentional, is they're all values driven. So, when you're values driven, it allows you to show up. I choose places where it's humanistically driven, and we value people, and we value, creating a better life. in different ways of talking about that. So to me, that's the ultimate, the ultimate. So when you have to kind of, that helps me in my play. Like if that wasn't true here, I probably wouldn't thrive. I probably wouldn't be as good of a coach. I'd be kind of running against the fabric. Right. And so I would suggest to the investors when you're looking at your CEOs, like what else is there behind the core of the business? Is there something more? Is there more purpose behind that? And how do you bring that to life? And how do you think about that for your leadership team? Because that is an investment too.
Yeah, no kidding. You've worked in organizations of varying, large organizations, but of varying sizes. What's something that people wouldn't expect about leading people when there's 1.4 million of them?
It's what that they wouldn't expect. So it's interesting. On one hand, so many people, everybody would expect that, right? But the thing, I would think they wouldn't expect the amount of listening and the love and the level of listening. Every single person for me, it was shocking. For every new person, they're like, oh my God. And then the other part is you wouldn't expect, it's not even, because I haven't been here long enough to have the depth of relationships in the front line like our leaders have, and they have the people they know and the relationships and what it goes back to and families, and it's amazing. And it really is. And people wouldn't expect how close, how much people know about each other and how much they care about them. Like it is, I don't know if it's coming across, but it's a lot and it's deep. So unexpected.
That's a fun answer.
Mm-hmm.
How fun is it to work at a place that's the answer?
I mean, where else would you want to go? I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
It's because you're doing every day you're coming in. Again, thank God for the moment we're not in crisis. So every day we're coming in to live our purpose, which is, help people live better lives. So that's a good thing to spend your time and energy on. And not every day is fun. We're dealing with people. So you're always dealing with unique situations, but the opportunity that we have and the ability to have impact in the world around us is absolutely true because of our scale. But you don't need scale for that, by the way. You need clarity of purpose and clarity of values and how you want to show up every day and what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears again.
Okay.
When you think about how many folks there are in the HR and people functions across just this country, let alone the world, there's so many hardworking, ambitious people who love others, who would like to reach the top ranks, the top ranks at the largest organizations, and yet so few do. What do you think is different about you? Why have you excelled so much when there's so many other smart people who care about humans and yet haven't been able to accomplish what you've accomplished?
Well, good question. So I mean, the thing that I know is somewhat unique about me, or I've been told a lot in this role, is my business perspective. So I'm very deep in the business and understand it very, very well. And I'm much more of a, how do we get to the outcome of the business versus manage the policy? So I don't live in the policy of HR. I do it, I form it, I support it, all of that, but it's not where my energy goes. My energy goes into the success of the business and the people around me and helping align the organization to achieve the commitments that we've made to all of our stakeholders, whether it's shareholders, community, associates, and our customers and our partners, because partners here are a big, big deal, as they should be everywhere. But I orient myself that way and helping raise the team. And I do it through the lens. I'm very much kind of have a talent for talent. And then I live in the practice of how to enable infrastructure, how to enable people infrastructure to enable that.
Okay. I love this. Give us an example. Let's talk about, like your bosses get held to account by the shareholders of what's happened to our profits, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about marrying a focus on those type of things that your bosses are being
Yeah.
held accountable to,
Yeah.
and creating the kind of place that the best people want to work, and mixing those and
How
how
that
you
all
cross those.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like
I
just some examples. I'm sorry. Well, we
some
have this.
example. Well, the it happens at a I'm going through. Usually living in the macro. So we have a plan that we want to achieve. It's public. You hear about it through earnings and otherwise. Okay. A certain amount of revenue, a certain amount of income. And then we put together, and like John does, he puts together kind of a set of pillars and beliefs that he's driving, right? So the question becomes like, how deep does everybody understand that? How mature are those capabilities? Do we actually know what we're talking about? Do we have the resources in the right place? So I lead dialogue and work with each of the leaders, and my team does, to assess our ability of not only alignment with strategic value, but then ensuring that all of the muscles are built and that we're thinking through our resources, both both capital and people, and that we're assessing them and putting them in the right place. So this is like, so I work with finance and we're thinking about all of our headcount and how we're going to manage that. And then I work with the leaders and we set up methodologies so that they can navigate how to get more headcount for particular things. But we look at the ROI against the total, and is that something we should invest in or not invest in? Like because we have every industry is represented in a Walmart, it depends what path, whether it's merchandising or marketing or healthcare or our revenue.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you think of a story maybe from the last few years where you're like, you know what? This is something we're going to need to think hard about. This is something we're going to make some decisions about. Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean so one of the ones that came to mind was last year we, as a leadership team, for the first time realized that there's a set of work, we call them strategic enablers, and they're around the quality of our inventory data, or they're around the quality of our customer data, or around our ability to provide a great search experience, right? And so what ended up happening is none of that there was no alignment around that. They all knew it was issues, and it was stopping the organization moving forward. So through an exercise of dialogue that I organized across the leadership team, we discovered it together. We aligned together that we developed these strategic enablers. We put teams behind them. We put governance behind that. We invested in the right way. We set a 3-year course of things so we don't lose our way, so that we can enable. So the dialogue, so every one of these, there's 6 of them, has a whole set of work that we follow day to day. So that work to get there was a significant amount of my time to help leaders get aligned and have the dialogues. And then how do we then communicate and manage the change in the org by keeping it fresh and making sure that they're resourced appropriately. I don't know if I'm not specific enough for you.
Well, it does make me think of a question. When I had taken a break from finance for a couple of years, we talked about before the show, I worked with a lot of folks in learning, in HR and stuff for the leadership training company. And then since starting the show, we've had a number of folks from, great organizations on who talked about this. And I have found like there are some folks, like everybody talks a good game about partnering with the business, but like through their words, you kind of find out like they almost feel like they love the people so much, but maybe they just have a lack of personal interest in business, or for whatever reason, it's almost like, what are the necessary evils of business so that I can give people a good life, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then I get to meet these less common folks who are like, I mean, they could be an investor, like they could be a CEO, they could be an entrepreneur, like they're like a true, like, let's like let's make money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then and then it's almost like they have two careers. They have the like, let's make money, hardcore
Yeah.
profitability, and this like, it's almost kind of like that Richard Branson, like, treat your people so well, they'll treat your customers well.
Yeah.
Like this,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's hard for CEOs or investors or people going through the hiring process to know, is this person just talking a good game, or do they really have that business acumen and that intention and interest of it? If you were advising CEOs who were interviewing for a chief people officer and they're trying to navigate, is this person just telling me what I want to hear, or are they really bringing the business chops? What
Yeah.
kind of advice would you have for
Well, I would
CEOs?
get into the dialogue about the business. I mean, that's what you have to do is like, you have to start thinking about, and the dialogue should naturally occur. If the dialogue is staying in the path of HR policy, then quite honestly, as an HR leader, then if that's all the CEO wants to know about, that's my first flag. I'm like, oh, well, that's okay. Got it. You're not really interested in that. If you're really interested in that as a CEO, then your conversation it's secondary. HR is secondary. You're going to assume by the time I've spent 20 years of my life that I kind of maybe have the basic foundations of HR. So now what you're really spending your time with me is like, here's my problem I'm suffering with. Here's what I'm thinking about. How would you handle this? And you'd get a coaching lesson out of it. How would you advise me? How would you advise my team? What would you want to know? Like, there's just a whole rich conversation that should take place as the interview. And then the HR stuff is like, oh yeah, we should probably talk about that eventually too and make sure we're aligned. Because there is philosophical stuff that needs to happen in the compensation and other type of reward mechanisms that is important to reinforce what they want to accomplish. So you do want that to be in sync. But the conversation that should be happening is a business conversation, not a policy conversation.
Yeah. Well, no wonder you got the top job here. Okay. We can wind down here. By the way, if people want to follow you, is LinkedIn the best place, or where are the best places online?
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Okay. So, after, multiple decades in high pressure at the highest levels, you still have like enthusiasm, like leaks out your eyes.
Yeah.
How are you this happy? What's your life assault? What is your life philosophy? Why are you like fun and exciting and not beaten down by the corporate man?
I don't know. I think it's part nature of who I am. But honestly, like if you're going to spend, I've been clear. I mean, a couple things I would say, just things. Early in my life, we had to close our business. My husband and I had to put ourselves out of work. I was 30 years old and I had 3 babies. Okay. And debt. And we had to sit there and go, oh, now what do we do? And I got advice to go to career counseling. And it was great advice. And I learned at that age, that was probably the golden nugget was, build a career for impact, not for job title. Okay. And so you have to think about what kind of conversations do you want to be in? So I have been fortunate that kind of the angle for the most part has put me in rooms with leaders who have found my voice helpful. And so when you show up, again, it's no different for me than for everybody else. If I get to come in and the team around me, I get to help and I get to contribute and I get to ideate and I get to participate. You can tell, you can hear it. It feeds me, right? And so I get to do it here at this incredible platform across, the United States, impacting millions of people. I mean, I'm very fortunate in that. And it really does. My team is great. The team surrounding the team is great. The people I work with are great. The values are great. I mean, really. So every day, is there something that kind of like gets at me? Sure. And do I get frustrated? Sure. Because that's human nature. But in the scheme of everything, I'm very fortunate. It's a good thing right now.
Yeah, that's so fun. Well, congrats on all the success. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's been a ball. I love it. Thanks so much.
Wow, it's so fun. Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for listening.